Jackie and Sue are our experts going to be helping us today.
I just don't really like that feeling.
Well, at least they've had more training in gerontology than I have. For this first session, you're going to need to be closer to the speaker if you tell me.
Yeah, okay. I'll do that because I'm actually what we're trying to do is get you in one row rather than in two rows. If we can just get it on up here, let's see.
Did everybody get an agenda?
Yeah, okay, and you will need two things. You'll need your a piece of paper here that's got a list on it that you got at the door as you come in, and you'll need a pencil.
Maybe if you could pull in just a little bit closer so that you're kind of,
They will have to, because they're going to be told.
this is an unfair hearing test.
I know what we pull out.
That's good.
At least 6 feet, you need to be about 6 feet from the table. Yeah, get it out of the way. There we go. I'm telling you, some lady gets up and scared of things. Communication. Communication and visual is actually hearing and visual problems and communicating with the elderly about things. Now, and then the second half will be transportation. That's when we'll be working with the wheelchairs and how to do this type of thing. And Sue will be demonstrating that. The first thing we're going to do is just get you completely involved because we're going to give you what's called an unfair hearing test. What's been done in this test is the high frequency sounds have been taken out. A person has been filtered out. You know how these geniuses, when they get to working with tapes and all this stuff, well, they've been able to filter out the high frequency sounds, which is one of the first things that begins to happen to hearing. When you begin to have a hearing loss, if you don't hear the high frequency sounds, you can hear the low frequency sounds better. Usually it's just the cilia that's in the inner ear is worn down. Now, a hearing aid won't help this. So they really haven't found anything wrong. Sir? No, not that particular problem. Of the high. Do what? Okay, go ahead, fine. Okay, that's owned by the journal. The what? It will amplify and bring in the high frequency.
Dr. Wright, I went to this hearing clinic out here on Townsend Drive. The doctor told me an operation or a hearing aid, it won't do me any good. And I got 25% hearing loss.
In the tape,
They say this.
he specifies all this, so you can disagree with the tape.
And also, I took this information from the gerontological series, which is dealing with sensory and sensory losses, and that's where I was getting that from. It just said that the hearing aids, which amplify sound, do not improve high frequency hearing. You know, the frequency of the hearing range. And so I was
think
going by that.
Probably what it means is that it does not improve the high frequency better than it improves the low frequency. Isn't that what it's referring to?
Which means you still have a
it
hearing
amplifies
problem.
everything. But I think the good hearing aid that you need that would filter out everything except high frequency, because it's really loud, is what you would need for that.
There may be that now that they offer frequency, because I think this is probably late 78, I think, or something like that, gerontological series. Wasn't even so late?
I think the tape, the hearing tape, he'll explain, so we probably should listen to that and then come back to this.
Okay.
He does go through and explains the simulation and tells what the hearing aid does and doesn't do.
Okay, and he said a lot of things that cause this would be genetic factors, it could be circulatory deficiency, and exposure to noise. I wonder how our new generation is going to do in the future with all of the noise of it being exposed to. And now, how do you pronounce that? Presbycusis? Presbycusis, is that close? Presbycusis, it's sort of, I hope it's not a Presbyterian disease, you know? Okay. We will listen to the tape. On the tape, they will tell you what to do. Now, they're going to give you a list of words 3 different times. And each time they give it to you, they're going to be filling out. They'll tell you what they're doing. They'll be filling out the sound. And you're going to list down the words that you hear on each one. Okay, good afternoon. Good to see you. We're trying to get as close to the tape as possible. You need to be about 6 feet from the tape to really, hear it as well as possible. In your packet or those materials that you got when you came in, there is a list. Here, we're taking what's called an unfair hearing test. We're taking a test for reading. Did you get it, sir? You want us to write down what we hear? Okay. He'll give some explanation. He'll give you instructions what to do, and then you say, "This is the test." And he will call out some words. Okay. And he will do this 3 different times.
And I promise I got it wrong. It's unfair.
Because these sounds all filtered out, but it's just helping you hear as an elderly person would be hearing, or someone who had some kind of a hearing difficulty. They might be in their 30s or 40s. So this is not really saying someone who's older. This is someone with a hearing problem of some kind. Okay, let's see if we get the tape started now.
Welcome to a new kind of listening experience. If you have not already done so, please read the instructions on the back of the record jacket before continuing. In our first series of demonstrations on getting through, we hope to show those of you with normal or near normal hearing just what the hard of hearing really experience as they attempt to follow and understand ordinary, everyday conversation. By the use of electronic filters and other methods, we will simulate the sound of speech as it might actually be heard by those with various types of hearing loss. We will, in effect, be giving you the ears of that friend or member of your family who has a hearing problem. By experiencing these hearing difficulties yourself, you may find new insight and greater understanding for the very real problems, the frustrations and emotional strain which the hearing handicapped undergo in day-to-day living, and in fact, in just getting along with people. By this time, you should have adjusted the volume of your phonograph or record player to a comfortable listening level for those with normal hearing, and set the tone controls as instructed on the jacket. As far as practical, all of the people listening should be seated approximately 6 to 8 feet from the speaker. If you have not completed the adjustments, replay this band until you have done so. Remember, once the volume control is set, do not readjust. It is important that the sound level remain the same as you listen to the demonstration material which follows. If the music you hear sounds a little peculiar, it is because it is coming to you in a very, very narrow frequency range. This is the way recorded music sounded in the early days of the phonograph, around 1915 or 1920. This frequency range is the best that the equipment of that period could reproduce. Most of the highs and a lot of the lows are missing. It is difficult to tell one instrument from another, because the missing pitches or tones are what give each instrument its own special color.
And she kept asking her to lock the chair. And this woman started to get upset. And what she was hearing is she wanted her to like the chair. She just wasn't responding at all. And it took a few minutes to realize that they weren't communicating at all. And finally, just looking straight at the person, repeating a lot.
And also gesturing sometimes helps, like it said, lock the chair, to get that across, and that helps.
Well, another thing to do is to change the
like they were saying too, all of these SH sounds and these high pitched sounds, and there are certain sounds that they just can't hear. That's a good way of dealing with it. Now you have in your folder that's handed out today, I'm not going to go over it, but it does, kind of summarize the ways of dealing with the hard of hearing. It's called How to Get Along with the Hard of Hearing. And Marion, I have a sheet here. It's communicating with confused and irrational adult, which you have some of too. But actually, they've got a second page sheet on here that's talking about guidelines for communication. And it really goes along with the hard of hearing as well as the confused. You might want to have some copies of that next week to go ahead.
Thank you.
Because it's basically the same thing when you're dealing with someone who is confused. Let them know who you are, where you are, maybe even touch, and then try to communicate what it is that you're saying.
There is a society of hard of hearing here in Raleigh. It meets regularly.
Okay, sort of like
It's good for anybody who hears
Kind of a support group.
And they also is a group that is teaching what they call cue speech.
Yes.
You use signs along with it here.
Right. And I think they've got a class in Cary, I believe, is where they have.
Well, they meet here in Raleigh every week.
Both of these meeting on it.
Yeah. Well, now that, no, the hard of hearing group, I think they meet about Monday. But the cue speech is often here 2 or 3 times a week.
Is that an elderly clientele or are those people that,
This is for
for
anybody.
anybody? I just wondered if there are any
2 years
people
on
who
up.
were older.
Is that published in the paper on things to do?
No,
Around
not
town or
around
something
town.
like that?
Well, around town,
We have some, I gave Marion.
I get information on.
Okay, if you will bring that next time, and then I had given Marion a folder on aging resources in Wake County, and then there's 2 sheets, flyer-like sheets there, that tells about hearing and where you can get help with hearing aids and things like that. They've got some information. Would you want to have it ready for the next week, you think, or just have it there, interested in that information? And I believe there's support groups and other things that are working with them. Okay.
One point about hearing aids. Being able to communicate to me is probably one of the most important things to people in this world. And when that goes, when an older person really loses that ability to communicate to hear, they've really lost a substantial amount of their communications ability. And unfortunately, hearing aids are extremely expensive, they're very tiny, and they're very easily lost. A lot of them go to the laundry and get laundered. Or get thrown away and, in with the other things. And it's very difficult to get those replaced. A lot of times families can't afford the several $100s to keep replacing hearing aids. I don't know what the answer is, but it's one of my biggest frustrations is that a lot of people in institutions have the hearing problems with no way to get the hearing aids.
And the cost of batteries has gone up tremendously.
It's really expensive. Oh, and plus the fact that the nursing assistant is taking care of the hearing aid. Sometimes, or if the older person's taking care of it.
They
Leave
leave
that
that
on, you wear those batteries down really fast. It's just a huge, huge problem.
And like the Medicaid, Medicare, they will get the hearing aids initially. But then, there's some things, I don't know, I think Medicaid will help pay with it. There are some things that will help with it initially, but they won't replace batteries, they won't replace the hearing aid, and it just really falls through the cracks. Barbara Aronnack is on the advisory committee, started a special fund for things that fall through the cracks, because there's so many things that are just not paid for under anything.
Hearing aids, too, glasses.
You get frames that the Salvation Army has been collecting frames, so that would help some with the glasses. And dental school does have a sliding scale for dentures and things like that, but it's still, there's a lot of this is just not really taken care of.
They do the glasses now.
They fit glasses too. They have glass frames that people might need, old frames.
It's very difficult. It's very difficult to get the people in to do the testing in the nursing home.
place, any place where you do it.
Yeah, where you've got all your equipment and all that kind of thing.
There's no solution to every problem. The thing about glasses and hearing aids is people abuse them when you give them. Because then they can make you, well, a little enough, you'll get enough. And that's the reason they quit paying for it. But you come in my office and say, I've got an extra kid, I want to get a new pair of glasses.
Now, are you an ophthalmologist?
That's the way they use the stamp.
Use their stamps and this type of thing. Do you work in ophthalmology? Do we have the projector for the vision, the slides there?
Yes, we'll need to
We'll
move
have to
the chairs
move
back.
along. This is actually a simulation. I think you just move the chairs, just the ones that are up here back, so you can see the screen.
Part 2 of this series presents an audio and visual simulation of age-related vision and hearing changes.
It's fine.
Excuse me a minute,
That's it, part 2.
I'm not on part 2.
Oh, yeah. That's
The visual loss of a person in his or her late 70s has been approximated. Therefore, some of what you see will be faded and out of focus. Keeping in mind that there's a great deal of variation within the elderly population, the simulation represents an average or midpoint stage of this age-related change. The audio simulation of presbycusis, which you will be hearing, is also that of an older person in the late 70s. You will be experiencing an instant visual and hearing loss. Remember, however, that these changes actually occur gradually, and within the context of the normal aging process, older persons are able to adjust to these changes with some success. This segment of the series presents environmental factors which influence the ability of the older person to accomplish the activities of everyday life. No solutions per se are presented, but positive as well as negative environmental factors are identified.
UPR 104.1 Grand Rapids, the radio station by the University of Michigan.
Because of vision and hearing changes, an older person's lifestyle may be affected from the time the day begins. For some, clothing selection may be a problem, since colors, particularly blues and greens, tend to fade and blend. The loss of ability to focus clearly can create problems in using appliances. Note that the temperature settings on this iron are difficult to read. Safely selecting sharp or pointed kitchen utensils, such as the knives in this drawer, may become difficult. In this case, the sharp objects have been separated from the other utensils to minimize safety hazards. Just as it is for most of us, reading a newspaper is a daily routine for a great many older people. The newspaper provides an important source of national and community events and shopping information. This information may affect the way the day is planned. As you can see, some of the information is more legible than others. Headlines are easier to read than the actual text of the story because of the size, boldness, and contrast of the lettering. After the day is planned, the first barrier encountered outside the home may be the front porch steps. There is no color contrast between these steps or between the steps and the sidewalk. This lack of color contrast causes a flattening effect or loss of depth perception, making it difficult for the older person to judge the width and depth of the steps. down a familiar residential street, it is the unexpected that can create a hazard. Objects that are hidden by shadows, such as the garbage can lid in the center of this scene, are difficult for anyone to see. Seeing objects in shadows is even harder for the older person because of the contrast in light levels between the bright sun and the shadowed area. Even at approximately 6 feet away, this garbage can lid is still difficult to see if the older person is not expecting it. Curbs and curb cuts present the same type of situation as the porch steps. Lack of depth perception distorts the height of the curb and the shape of the ramp. This distortion makes it both difficult to see and to anticipate the change in street level and contour. Public transportation plays an important role in the lives of many older people. In this example, the bus stop is easy to locate and identify because of the letter size, the bus symbol, and the color contrast of the sign. The schedule itself, however, is difficult to read because of the small and closely spaced lettering. In most cities, public transportation is easily identifiable because all vehicles are consistent in shape and color. Again, the printed information is not legible because of letter placement and distance.
Is this the bus to Main Street? Is this the bus that goes to Main Street? Thank you.
Even asking for directions may be futile because background noise from the traffic and the bus make the answer hard to hear. Unlike the porch steps or curb, the edges of these bus steps are much easier to determine because they're outlined in a high contrast color. But the grab rail on the right side is obscured because color was not introduced to define it.
Isn't this a beautiful shopping center? With the plants and the fountain, it's more like being in a park, and they have every kind of storage.
Using a shopping center for the first time can be overwhelming and disorienting for any of us until we become familiar with the setting. Usually, one would turn to a directory for this information. But for the aged person, the small print and the glare off a highly reflective surface provides very little assistance. Although this shopping center was designed to be visually pleasing in form, texture, and color, the glare from the natural light on the tiled floor makes it difficult to anticipate the stairway in the wall area ahead. Even in a familiar grocery store, tasks are not easy. The obvious difficulty of reading pricing can be a problem for anyone. Identifying a product and its quality behind plastic packaging further complicates the older shopper's task. Because of limited income, unit pricing is critical to the older shopper. At this counter, the pricing is clear, but unfortunately, the amount received for the price is unintelligible.
Could you tell me where the coin changer is? I can't seem to find it.
Doing laundry may be troublesome unless the older person is already familiar with how the machine operates. Here, the instructions are difficult to read. And, as in the case of the iron, the temperature control and wash cycle settings are very difficult to see. Returning home, even friendly barriers such as this dog on the sidewalk can be hazardous, unless the barrier decides to remove himself. In summary, these normal age-related vision and hearing loss
losses can have a dramatic effect on an older person's ability to function in his social and physical environment. We hope that this presentation will help you better understand some of the special problems encountered by older persons. We also hope that as you work with or for older people, that you'll keep in mind these gradual sensory changes and their impact upon the daily lives of the elderly in our society.
Just to give you an idea about the equipment that you're going to be seeing people using, I need a fourth person in a wheelchair. Go ahead, Mary, whoever wants to be in there.
Oh, I'll be in there.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, that might be time for mom.
Okay. I just didn't want anybody to spill. Obviously, the most important thing for the wheelchair is that the wheelchair works. And I can attest from experience that a lot of people's wheelchairs, for one reason or another, do not work. The first thing you have to check are the brakes. And there are two different kinds over here. This kind, you pull forward and it locks the chair. You pull backward, there's kind of like a groove there. And that kind is a little bit simpler, you just push it down. Okay, Jack, you're not locked.
I'm not lost. Well, it's hard.
Now pull it up. Pull it up. Pull it front.
It's an overdrive now.
Well, it's not locked there, it's not on the
Oh,
wheel.
is that a second one?
Mine's back.
All right, yours is backwards.
I've got a left-handed wheelchair.
No, they work. Whatever way is locked. So, there are many different models of wheelchairs, but I think the most important thing to check on a wheelchair and to make sure it's functioning is the brakes. And they can be adjusted. Sometimes what happens is on these, they'll come loose, and even when you push forward, it won't push back on the wheel. Now, you can understand why that is. Why do you need the locks?
So it doesn't slide out wrong.
Yeah. Okay. The most important, I think, the most important thing to somebody who is ambulating or, walking with difficulty is that they get safely in and out of this wheelchair, or else they're going to fall again. And a common mistake is to forget and sit down on something that's moving. Now that can be true just for a small straight chair. That doesn't have to be a wheelchair. All right, so the brakes are real important. Now the second part that's real important, and on this particular wheelchair over here, it's not working, the seat is sort of holding me. It's holding you. I know, it's holding.
So far, so good.
Sometimes from wear and tear, the seats start to come apart at these bolts. Okay? So you need to check and make sure that they're working. Now you notice that different people here have different leg rests and you have none. Some people don't need a leg rest. Why would that be? Well, that's one thing, if they don't have legs. But what else? Push. They can use their legs. They might just be weak.
But if you're trying to push this chair without any leg rest, they can't drag their seat.
It depends on the kind of problem. Some people can lift both feet up. They just can't walk and stand on it. Okay? Now, if they have, say, they've had a stroke and one side is paralyzed, what kind of a wheelchair are they in? That's right, one leg. Why? For which leg?
The paralyzed leg.
The paralyzed leg. Some of this sounds kind of obvious, but it's surprising what people don't realize. Now, they don't need the other pedal down when they're trying to use the chair. And very often what you'll see is a person doesn't understand this, that they need the leg rest for one foot, but the other foot they're supposed to be using. In fact, I had that happen to me the other day with one of my patients. The mother did not understand the use of the wheelchair real well. And I had demonstrated that her son could go ahead and use that wheelchair, but she had forgotten. And he was trying to build a wheelchair with one arm. I want you all to try that. Unlock your brakes right now. Start your engine. And just use your right hand.
Put it back.
Go around in circles.
Hi.
Stick to the canoe one pedal.
No, just one hand. Okay. Now, go ahead and use one foot and one hand. See, you have a little more control.
Man, look at her go.
Try to back up. Turn around and back up. What's this little
Give a
wheel
signal.
over here? Okay. It's so that you won't get your fingers caught in the big wheel. It makes it a little easier in the turning.
I've been. She was asking why there's two on the right
Oh.
side of it.
Okay, now I'm trying to think.
There's not one on the
There's
other
not
side.
one on the other side. Is this one of the ones that you can control from one side? I think. I'm not real sure, but I think it might be that it's a double arm driver. You can go ahead and go both ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's controlling both. You can go either direction, huh?
It turns both ways.
Both ways, yeah, it can go either direction. They have different models of this. One that they, well, it is designed for somebody with a stroke who can't reach over their body. Try to do that now. Go ahead and reach over to the other side. Pretend one arm doesn't work. See how awkward that is? But I have seen people who spend most of their life wheeling a wheelchair bent over like that. Now, there's another model of a one-arm drive that is a much newer and expensive model, but it's very good for people who have severe handicaps. And it has a bar that you press forward and you go left and right. And so they're getting more sophisticated wheelchairs for people who can't use both hands. It's fun, isn't it? Now, there's another thing that you'll see. This particular model has a different footrest than these two. And what it is it's adjustable. That's all. Some of them, I'm not really sure, yeah, there's a little room. Make it quiet here. So you can move it up or down, and if somebody has legs that are swelling or uncomfortable, you can raise it up a little bit for them. Now, there are some wheelchairs, and we don't have a model here, where you can actually remove this pedal, especially for somebody, say, who has paralysis on one side. It makes it a lot nicer than having to fight with this. This is great for bumping into, and I've got more bruises to attest to it. So if you don't need it, you don't have to have it on there. All right, on this one, a little bit, go ahead and put your foot up. A little bit different than the other one. That holds the leg in place. Now, with a lot of people who have had strokes and the one side is paralyzed, what happens is their foot starts to fall off the pedal. And then it gets caught underneath, and they just can't hold it up there. And this is one solution to that problem, is to support it back here. Another solution is they have a little strap that will fit on some of these pedals. It's just a semicircle, little loop, and it holds the heel in place. So there are adjustments to wheelchairs, and it's really a good idea to have a tailor-made wheelchair for whatever the problem happens to be. The other thing you were saying, someone who has both legs amputated doesn't need the footrest and all that, but they do need another kind of wheelchair. What can you think that is? Not necessarily.
Hold a minute.
Well, they need a seat belt. But besides, everybody needs a seat belt. What else do they need? About the wheelchair itself. Think about how they're going to get into the chair. Well, that's one way. A Hoyer lift is one way, but not everybody has that. Have you ever seen a transfer board? You're going to see people who can use a short board. It's smooth, and on each end it tapers. And they can put it on the bed, and they can scoot across this board. But if it's a regular wheelchair like this, what happens? It run into the arm. So there are a lot of wheelchairs where you can actually remove the arms, and this is very useful. Okay, especially for transferring in and out of bed. Does anybody know what side the wheelchair should go to? If you've got a person, say, who's paralyzed on the left side, how should you position that wheelchair? On the good side. Yeah, okay. Let's see if I can. Right side paralysis. Did you have a left side paralysis? Okay. Now, first thing you have to do is lock your chair. Oh, good for you. I like that. Both sides. Well, you can put your foot down. It's paralyzed. I know, but it won't stand up by itself. Okay. I think it's a good idea, if you're not a physical therapist, before you ever try to transfer someone, somebody take me hold this chair for me, because I'm not going to you got up without a watch. Okay, let's put your feet down on the floor. Okay. Now, before you transfer anybody, you should know how they transfer. And what I mean by this is somebody should have demonstrated to you already how well they do. There are some people, when you try to transfer them, they're completely dead weight. And if somebody weighs 200 to 300 pounds, are you going to be able to do it? I can't. Not without help. You know, it's not safe. Especially, say, if we're transferring into that chair that has that armrest like that, you've got to get over that armrest. You have to clear that, so it's a little bit difficult. All of these things, you want to remember that your back is very easily injured. The first thing that generally happens when I come over to somebody like this and say, we're going to stand, we're going to stand up, what would you do? Just think about what you do. If I'm like this, what are you going to do? Yeah, okay, and a lot of people go for my neck. Okay? An awful lot of people would go for my neck. What's going to happen to your back? If they get an arm lock on you, you're in trouble.
Switch roles right fast.
Yeah, you better believe it. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to stand right where I am. All right, the most important thing is this left foot right here is the one that doesn't have any control. Okay? So I want to make sure that whatever I'm doing, I'm blocking that left foot. So it doesn't go like that when I stand her up. The other thing is I want you to bear weight, please, on the side or else I'm in trouble. Okay? Thank you. The other thing is that you want to have your knees close to theirs so in case they start to buckle, that you can lean in. And the most important thing to you in doing anything is to bend your knees. Okay? So I'm reaching down, and what I want you to do is, I'm going to use this arm. Press down on this chair. Pull yourself forward first with this arm. Okay, good. Okay. Now I'm reaching in like this. Now don't resist me, because what we're going to do is we're going to go over here, over the other chair. 1, 2, 3. Oh, now, it's really not that difficult. Depending on how big the person is, how comfortable you feel, sometimes you get yourself in a situation where you don't quite clear the handle, but if you've got their knees blocked and you've got that one foot blocked, you can rescue that person if they start to slip a little bit, you know. Sometimes it takes, you won't get them in the chair exactly the way you want them. So you might have to, once they get into the chair, do some readjusting. And it's difficult to get the leverage, but it should be leverage and your back should be bent. Does that feel awkward? Good, good. Okay.
Susan, you want to talk about how to hold the person or lift them up there?
Okay, yeah, so there's the second thing I was going to do. Now, if there are 2 people in the house that are helping, then it's not just you alone. You sit back in the wheelchair. A lot of older people, if you're taking care of them and you're not even worrying about transfer, they get tired after time and the hips start to go. And so the next thing you know, you're slipping out on the floor. If you have 2 people in the house, it's easier. Mary, do you want to help me? Okay, the first thing, go go that way. I think it probably helps since I'm going to get up underneath her. Now, the first thing is I'm still going to ask her to do some of the work. Go ahead and pull yourself up with this arm. Pull yourself forward. You can push on this. Pull forward. Don't scoot out with your hip. Pull up with your hand. Okay, okay. Now, what I'm going to do is take your arms, put them together, okay, and hold like this. You see how I'm not pressing on one arm. I'm not pulling her up underneath her arms. I'm holding onto her wrist. Now what I want you to do is get underneath the two legs. 1, 2, 3. See how easy that is? That's easy to get somebody back. But if you're alone and this person is slipping out of their chair, you don't have a choice to go run down the street and get somebody. So there's another method. It involves blocking the foot and getting where the knees are. Scoot out a little bit for me. Okay. All right. Now, what I'm going to have you do again is to pull forward. Go ahead. That's right. Okay. Now you're going to push as I push. Whoops.
Did I push the wrong way?
Yeah, I think you did. The idea is to go back in the chair. Don't push out. Please, let's come forward again. Okay, now 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. There. I just sort of scooted with your knees. It's not as easy, and of course, if the person's got good muscle strength, you're in trouble. Okay. That's how you can get somebody sitting upright. Now, a lot of people have trouble staying in a wheelchair. And the most common mistake is they think if they put a tray in front of them, that's going to keep them in the chair. And you'll see the lap boards. What's going to happen if that person starts to slip? They're going to get right here. And it's true for the restraints, too, that go around here. What do they hold in? The ones to this. Yeah, they just hold this part. There are some really nice straps out that are like seatbelts. What they do is they attach back here. They hold the shoulders up. Then it's like a Y. And there's a bar. Comes down to wherever the waist is. And then you have another strap that goes across here, which is where you start to fall. Okay? And that strap attaches back here. Okay? To me, that's the best seatbelt that I've seen for somebody who's just always falling out of a wheelchair.
Well, in Optum's nursing home, they just have those
Those
restraints.
I know, and you can see them applied almost everywhere. You can imagine what that does to a woman. If you have it real tight on there, and pretty soon they start to slip and it's coming up. So you really have to watch to see what the problem is. I don't know. Any wheelchair that you sit in for any length of time is going to become uncomfortable. And a lot of people need cushions. That is not a luxury. That's a necessity on the tailbone. Okay? Because especially when the seats start to sag, there's no support there. There's also no support in the back. And one of the nicest things are these little pillows that you can kind of put down there in the small of the back to sort of support. So positioning is really important. A lot of people get very cranky sitting in these things for 4, 5, 6, 8 hours. And it's understandable because they really aren't comfortable.
Are those the solid foam pillows?
There are different models. Some of them are water cushions. Some of them are foam with raised bumps on them, like an egg crate. Some of them are just a regular cushion, you know. The donut is another common one that you'll see. It's foam and it's round and then there's a hole cut out in the middle.
The egg crate thing is delightful. I just got in a cab from the school. Oh, it's just wonderful.
Oh, except in the summer when it's hot.
No, we'll take it when it's hot. Sheepskin.
Sheepskins. Yeah, sheepskins are good. If you have somebody that's always sitting and not always lying on the same side, you know, of course you have to worry about bed sores. And so cushions like that can help to prevent that sort of thing. The other thing I wanted to do is to get up now, and I want somebody to, one of the men, to volunteer to get on the table.
Not quite.
You have to know which side, of course, on the bed. You know, I gotta get out of the way with that. He has that wheelchair that doesn't have legs. I don't want to argue with his legs. It's not the world's safest. I wouldn't put you in there if you were paralyzed, believe me.
I might definitely do this, Peg, go ahead. That's what I did, didn't I?
Okay. Well, it's a common mistake when I come and say we're gonna get up now, what are you gonna do to me? What are you gonna do to me if I come over and say we're gonna get up now, and you say you're gonna do that? What would be the impulse?
Not yet.
Now, the other thing
I
too.
looked at it like it is.
You're leaning down, and an older person will reach up. I mean, it's just natural. You know, and they'll try to grab you around the neck. And that's the wrong place for that on. Okay?
It all depends, doesn't it?
Dr. Ryan says that's a good play.
Anyway, okay, this side over here is the weak side. And this side is doing just fine. Now, the first thing that they can help you in transferring, the first thing that can happen is you have to get the legs off the side of the bed. Okay? And since you've got a perfectly good leg here, you can use this leg to help that leg. I want you to put this foot underneath that foot. So lock it underneath. Okay.
Ride it over.
Just ride it over. Okay, and now start to move. Okay, now you're to this, hold still a minute. Now you're to this point. What's happened to the arm?
He's pushing with it.
No, no, it's mighty good.
It's not any good. What's happened to the arm?
Fall
It's going to fall off. And a lot of people are going to forget about this arm. Reach over and grab it on the phone. Bring it and put it on your tongue. Sort of right there. Okay? So that's where it should be. Now, so that I don't end up doing too much work here, I'm going to reach down behind here, and I'm going to have my hand down here. And what I want you to do is to press up. You don't have to hang on to it. Okay? With your elbow, I want you to start pressing up. Okay? You're up now. Now, usually you're not quite in position. And usually the bed's not this high. Okay?
Yeah, I fell out one not quite this high.
Hopefully you've got something you can crank down to the floor. The other thing that you have to remember is the bed has to be anchored. If it's on wheels, and I've learned that the hard way. Because if for some reason you don't successfully get this person to stand, and they have to sit back down and the wheels are not locked on the bed, what's going to happen? You're going to lose the bed. Okay.
But think about me. That's the big
I'm thinking about me because I'm coming over.
Oh. You want to demonstrate?
Okay, it's basically the same thing. This side's paralyzed here.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's try to get your foot down on the floor. I know this is kind of
Short leg.
I know, I have that problem too. All right, but if that other foot was there, I'd be blocking it. All you're going to do is now stand for me. Okay. Now, if he's doing real well, he can stand like this. If not, he's got to lean on his chair. And just stand for a minute here. There are two different ways. If the person's really strong, they can reach the closest armrest to them. Okay? If they're not real strong and they can't swing their hips, they haven't got that hip movement in yet, then what's best is to have them reach over to this. And you're already in a position to swing. And so all I'm doing is pivoting. I'm kind of at an angle here so you can see that. Okay?
We made it.
Yeah. And then you fall off the table.
I put back on the table.
Now, I don't expect you to remember the techniques, but the thing about it is, I think the most important thing is save your back. It's not worth it to ruin your back. You want to make sure that you're bending your knees when you're transferring somebody, that it's relatively safe, and that you're not allowing people to pull on you. And that's what they'll try to do, because it's just a natural response. Okay? Now, you can go ahead and roll. How many people are familiar with the walkers? This is a little short they graduate from parallel bars in the PT department where somebody's, sort of assisting them, to different kinds of devices. And this is one of the most common ones, the walker. For someone who can't lean like this on their arms, there are a lot of people with arthritis that can't do this. Or if they have one hand, they can't use that hand to hang on. And there are different devices that'll, either one arm or both arms. So there are a lot of different kinds of walkers. The important thing is when the person is stepping, they're stepping into this. And my favorite trick, and most of the people that I see in the nursing homes, they're walking. It takes training and understanding on the part of the person. Now, I'm going to come up to a chair. Invariably, when somebody sees a chair, it's time to sit down right now. Over here, I want to get in that chair. And so they'll start to, come around and do all this stuff, and they'll be trying to get in the chair. You need to come up, and then you still need to use the walker, okay? And you need to turn around. And this is the safest way, is to get them to make sure that their legs are touching the back of any chair they sit on. They'll do better if it's a higher chair, if it's one of your sofas where you get down in it, you'll never get them up again. So the higher the chair, the better, especially for arthritics. The other thing, especially a chair that does not have arms, you have to instruct the person to reach behind, and if they have to use the both hands or even partial, to reach on both sides before they sit down. Now, the other common mistake that you're going to see, and a lot of falls occur this way, how do I want to get up?
Same way.
Okay. You want to push up from the chair, reach for the walker. So many people. This isn't going to give them any support. But you'll find an awful lot of people do that. So the idea is that you never allow an older person to pull on anything. It's pushing. Okay? And then up. And leaning in.
If you're helping them too, I think you have to remember that it frequently takes a while to catch their balance after they get up. You have to stand
Has to
a
be
moment
slow.
to make sure before they can start moving forward.
Coming out of a bed where you've been lying down to sitting, a lot of people get dizzy. It might take a few minutes for their head to clear. Everything has to be done sort of slowly to be safe. The other thing are quad canes. Of course, these are a little less support than the walker. People who are one-handed, of course, can use these. It's a little bit better than a cane if there's more support here. But there again, you don't want to be walking this. Okay.
Well, with that hand walker, do you put the good foot first?
Hand walk.
I mean, yeah, like that one.
This one?
You put that first, and then do you bring your good foot up to it first?
No, I think what you're going to have to do is try to get the other foot forward and then lean in. You have to swing out. You have to swing out and get in position and then bring it up. I'm pretty sure. Now I'm an OT, not a PT, and I don't ambulate every day, so. But I think this is one of the things. Like anything else, I
Let
think.
me try that thing.
Try. Okay. Go ahead.
My legs.
I know you put it on the side.
Good foot, then you put it my way.
Okay, it's the good leg. It's the good leg that I said first, didn't I? Because it was the good leg that I was talking on, and then swing it.
It's hurt if I put it good my
You
way
don't
down.
want weight. I thought that's what I said. Yeah, you put the weight on the good leg and you swing the other one because you don't want to put full weight on it. It's the same way with crutches. You don't want to put the weight on this side. you've got a curb or a short step. Now, the safest way to get somebody down a step is to take them down backwards. Okay? That's what these are for. By the way, these things are really wicked. And you have to be careful because they can come back and really hit you bad in here. Okay? But you tilt the wheelchair. And you're tilting the person back. Now, if you're going down a steep step here, if you've got them coming down backwards, they're coming towards you. That's safer than if you're trying to do this. You don't want to dump somebody out.
And into an elevator.
Into an elevator, if there's an incline or a rough spot, a lot of elevators, I just invariably turn people around and back them in.
Going out the door off the.
Yeah, I just think it's safer. You have more control if something happens.
How do you get the wheelchair patient out of a chair?
Okay, it's the same way that you're going on your heels. You still go to the stronger side.
Well, suppose I'm thinking of someone who is not paralyzed.
Just wait.
And bad back.
Okay. Well, you still do the same thing. You just bring it up to one side or the other, whatever you thought was the stronger, whatever they preferred. Sometimes it's the way the furniture is arranged, and you have your choice. Sometimes you have to come this way. This isn't as easy, but if somebody can stand and they can pivot a little bit, then it's not that difficult.
And they grab the.
But I let them do as much as they can do. If they can stand pretty well, they can reach to this side, and then you can have them get their balance, and then slowly turn around. Reach for both before they sit down. Reach for both handles, and then sit down. So many people will get this far from the wheelchair and go like this, and they're ready to sit. So if their legs are touching the back, it's safer. Some chairs are better than others. On this kind of floor in here, with the kind of metal suction, it makes me a little bit nervous if somebody's having trouble to sit on these chairs because they can scoot. So you want to, check out your places. Any other questions? How many people would transfer to the home? Good. The other thing is how, one of the questions was how would you lead a blind person? Does anybody know? Can anybody, if I'm blind, then them hold you. Hit the elbow, yeah, don't pull.
And as I understand it, you'd be one step ahead of them so that they'll know whether you're going down or
Yeah.
whether you're going
Well, they
up.
can feel. If you're that close to their body, they can feel. And it's a more secure position if we've got their elbow.
If you have their elbow or they have your elbow.
Well, somebody stand up. I do this automatically. Either way, I think. Okay. Well, you can take mine.
You're blind.
You're blind. Okay, that's not as much support to me as this is.
Well, it depends on the person.
Yeah.
See, I
If the
mean,
person's been walking around for a long
If it's-
time, then this is okay.
if it's an older person who's frail, then I think you do have to support under the elbow. But if it's a younger person and you're just helping them find the street or something like that, they prefer just to follow slightly behind you, holding on. I think that I've got a film on it. I just saw it.
Has anybody done a blind trust walk? I lost my nerve as soon as I got to the steps. If you ever have a chance to do this, it really gives you a feeling of what it's like to be totally blind. Have someone lead you around with your eyes closed. And pick an area that has maybe a few short steps. It takes a tremendous amount of courage to allow someone else to do that for you, to guide you. It really is scary. So it's no wonder that there are an awful lot of people who are really, really afraid of trying to walk on their own. Okay?
Fine.
Thank you.
I appreciate all of your help.